Hello, and welcome to Office Hours with Amber. I'm Amber, and this is Office Hours. We are in week 3 of July, which is the Intro to Financial Modeling month. We are joined by Giles Mayo. He is one of the co-founders of Full Stack Modeler, and you guys have been hearing his sweet, sweet voice for the last 2 weeks with me. The audio is good. Giles, say hello.
Hello.
I'm gonna wait for that to come through. But yes, so today I'm interviewing and getting some feedback from Giles. He is a master financial modeler, one of like freaking 5 in the world. I think there's 7 now. How many are there?
8 now. Dim early
8.
was added at the 8th. How about that for a crazy addition? Good Lord.
Okay, audio's through. I'm done looking at my phone. Super stoked for this interview. So, cool thing. I guess before even to get into my nonsense, I think you're gonna give yourself a much better, well-rounded, articulate answer of who are you? Where'd you get your start in financial modeling? I did a little bit of deep dive research on your LinkedIn, but I don't want to expose any details about your business that you don't want. So, without further ado, who are you?
I
Why do you
didn't, I
like
didn't know
numbers?
I didn't know how you could expose something I wouldn't want, but that's cool. By the way, did you try and put a British accent on when you said my name?
Maybe.
It sounded,
Giles Mail. That's
I
how, in my mind, I say your name all the time.
hello, I'm from London. Yeah, cool.
Well, I
Uh,
appreciate you being here.
it's all right.
Give me like the Tia, like the spark notes of your kind of journey from, and I saw an article or maybe a blog post that you had posted about how, which I sympathized with like empathized with so specifically, where you're like, okay, I'm gonna go be a consultant and I'm gonna post this great website, and then people are gonna flood in and they're gonna want my services, and then it's just kind of crickets for a second. So where did you get your start kind of professionally? What led you to kind of doing it on your own? And how has it kind of grown since then?
Yeah, I would say my 20s was one phase where I was an employee. So I did lots of financial modeling, not that surprisingly, and worked on bids, which was very difficult and pressured, high pressured, but very good experience. Then I hit 30, and I think I've written about this loads and spoken about it, but just hit 30, felt old, and was like, I need to do something else with my life. Didn't know what that was, got passed up for promotion and started on this journey of like, right, I'm going to do my own thing. I don't know what it is. Built a website, thought it was amazing and didn't make one sale. Didn't know how any of that stuff worked. I just thought it looked snazzy. I assumed everybody would want my services and pay me money. And that didn't really happen. So then re-pivoted again and did more contracting and freelancing. Eventually met Miles.
Miles.
Miles, my business partner at Full Stack, who was at an event. I think it was either an ICAEW event in London or a USPRIG event, and I was going to these events on my own at the time just to network and met him. We got on really well, ended up in business together, and to cut a very long story short, now we've been running Full Stack for like 5.5 years, which is a training business. So we have lots of B2C clients and B2B clients, and around that, I am an MVP and an MFM, and I make music videos because I
That's
like the
right.
vision. And yeah, we can talk about anything you want in that, or start looking at levels.
And in the first week of this month, I definitely gave that video enough, like plenty of time to shine. I will give that thing airtime anytime. I remember being at the conference and sending that video back to my friends at home, and I was like, this is who I want to be. I was like, this is, I want to be professionally untouchable in a way where I can make nonsense videos in comparison to Excel. So it is aspirational, and thank you for the
You
work
will
you
be
do.
pleased to hear that video two is almost in the final stages of editing. It's 10 times crazier. Uh, be released on the 30th of September, so you got that to look forward to.
Oh my gosh, hot off the press news. September, you said September 13th?
30th. It's on Excel's
30th.
current official 40th birthday, so MVP music video too. It's
Oh my
crazy.
gosh, cool. Well, how exciting. And you're presenting at the Active Cell conference this year as well as commentating, correct? Or
Correct. Yeah, I am commentating for MECC. trying to compete in MEWC. I'm on the next live stream in next week. That's terrifying.
Absolutely.
And then speaking at the Active Cell, as are you, as you are, as are
As
you.
we are. And this is the moment to plug. Do you have your affiliate code off the top of your head if people want to get a discount?
No, but I think you've got one. You can plug yours if you want.
I do. I could try to like give you the layup if you wanted it, of the hundreds of thousands of people watching this stream, obviously.
Yeah.
Also, Jack, I'm so excited to see your name in the chat. Usually this stream is at 7 p.m. my time, which is mega late for you guys. So one, thank you for joining this. And then two, it kind of is nice to do this a little earlier in the day so that my like anxiety can just be done at 5 p.m. But yes, if you guys would like to see me and my bestie Giles at the Active Cell Conference here in December, the promo code for 10% off is Peachy Pro, because Peachy Profitability is a lot of letters and Peachy Pro feels good. Okay, we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes. Are you so excited?
Yes.
I know I am. So the first section of this is me just gloating, not gloating, but like giving you flowers, because this intro to financial modeling was such a nice intro, like it said, introduction to financial modeling. It's not supposed to be all the technical nuts and bolts and everything. And I think it's good that you spent probably, I don't think it was a third, but there was a substantial few chapters on like asking the right questions. There are standards, there are mechanics, and there are things that you need to know before you even touch Excel, which I'm glad that you started with that. And I think that's really intelligent to do it that way. And I think people, especially for people that are brand new to financial modeling, definitely need to start exactly there. And I think my background in industrial engineering and project management made me think, I already know those answers. I've got it, like no biggie. And
Yeah.
that was my ego got in the way of actually crucially answering those questions, which I went into this month with the expectations, oh, I'm going to build this model, we're going to review it, technical, it's going to be so good. And then I found myself feeling a lot of friction when I went to go build it, because none of my answers of my why, how, and who and everything was very solidified. So congrats on that. That's fantastic. And then secondarily, I do want to give you flowers because the impact you have on those in your community and the people around you is so profound. And I don't think you take enough time to recognize that. And it's like ooey gooey bullshit, but I'm going to be like ooey gooey for a sec. But truthfully, at the conference, if you wouldn't have said sparkle boots were going to lunch, I don't think I would have leaned in as hard into this weird little aesthetic thing of like me having a seat at the table with like you, Emma, Paul, just to chit chat with people that are already doing stuff in the content space was enough for me to be like delusional enough to be like, I could do this. Like, I mean, whatever. Like I probably have something to bring to the table. And so through that and my already understanding of Office Hours with Amber and what I wanted to do, it homogenized in my brain specifically that and the way that you did your presentation about the three parts of the consultant, the Excel lover, and the trainer, the way that
Yeah.
you had articulated that you are allowed to live in these three brains and all three have different emotions when it comes to modern Excel. When I figured that out, I was like, oh, well, of course I'm excited, but also no wonder I'm so stressed because my clients aren't even there yet. So I'm feeling apprehensive, but also that shouldn't be a reason not to sharpen my skills. So the way that you articulated that created a seat for me at the table, ultimately created Office Hours with Amber, which is the only reason that I was invited to be a presenter at the conference. So, ipso facto, the impact you have on your community is profound. If people do not tell you, they should.
Can I just, if Jack is listening to this, the fact that you just said that I wouldn't give myself credit for things like that will definitely make Jack laugh. But I appreciate it. And actually, like the talk in Vegas was, whenever I do talks like this, and I don't know how you approach this stuff, but I don't want to keep churning out the same talk 3 times a year because it's easy. I want to talk about stuff that's important to me. So that talk at the time was the most important thing that was on my mind, like the various, I think I showed like 12 ways you could solve a problem in Excel. This year, it's going to be about my journey competing in the MEWC because it's been flipping difficult.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting.
Which do you want to talk a little bit about how you've been approaching your practice and training or like or do you want to save it for the conference?
No, I don't mind, as long as it doesn't derail what you're planning to talk about in this session.
We got
Um,
50 more, we got plenty of time, so feel free.
just tons of hours of practice. I took about a month off recently, but I was really putting, lots of hours in every week. And there are lots of people that have been helping me, like Nick Boberg, Anders, Jean, Bo, I mean, Dim, obviously, and everything that he does. And probably have Eric Ohm and other people. So a lot of these top players have been giving me a lot of their time regularly, not like training necessarily like hands on, this is what you have to do, but quite often just doing battle training cases
Yeah.
together. So yeah, it's been an eye opener. A bit like you were saying, you thought you might walk into this course and be like, ah, it's easy. I knew that MEWC would be hard, but I didn't quite appreciate how tough it was going to be. And that has been a very rewarding journey for me, which is good.
Absolutely. And I think the thing I love about the Excel community is everyone's so excited to give and share their information and passionate about teaching others. And it's like, I think that everyone comes at it with such an abundant mindset on just wanting to see everyone else benefit. And ultimately, this does impact our like professional work, but really, MEWC is kind of a hobby and competition and, kind of fun. But like ultimately, it does also rise. Oh, Jack said Giles is important to Giles this year.
How did you
But
like it?
it's I think it's really what I love about the Excel community is that everyone is so willing, able, and interested and passionate about teaching and learning from everyone else. And even like you and I had the call last month talking about the My Simulation, you're like, oh, that's a really interesting way to interact with Power Query and randomness and all of that. And so it's interesting that even I like to kind of describe as everyone's got their own little sparkle subset. Like I work more in logistics and engineering. Y'all are more in finance. There's other people that are like mining engineering with Emily. Like, so I like that everyone's got their own little niche sparkle and everyone's
Yeah.
similarly really like respectful and interested. And I love that similarly to like I use the word body doubling. So if I want to get something done, it's much easier when there's like a friend nearby working on something similar or near like quietly doing their thing. So shout out Eric Ohm. Me and him are constantly doing those focus fiestas where he's pushing things uphill, I'm pushing things uphill. So it's really
Yeah.
nice that you've set up kind of infrastructure to be able to push your own skills forward. How, and I already know kind of the answer, but how have you seen your rankings grow or shrink as it's gone? Has it been consistent or joggy?
First 3 rounds, I think it was 3 rounds, I just couldn't get over the absolute sheer panic of being in a competition. So I described it as just spending 30 minutes with like screaming noises going on in my head, forgetting how you even start the function X lookup or sum ifs. I just forgot how to use Excel for 3 rounds and didn't do very well. Then I started to calm down, and then up until the last round, I was seeing a very consistent movement in the right direction, I guess. And I was just outside the top 50 for not the last round, the one before that. Took a month off because I'm so stupid. I thought, I'm doing really well now. This is easy. It'll just keep going like that. Took a month off and then bombed the last round. So that was another good reminder that you can't stop practicing because you do very quickly forget what the hell you've done before.
When learning a new language, if you don't use it, you lose it. And that's so tough because you'd think like we've worked in Excel for so long that it wouldn't fall off that quick until it does.
A month. And then I was just I got into the last round. I was like, I'm an idiot. I can't do this. This is crazy.
I completely feel that. Um, but yes, I'm excited to. So you're going to be competing in this next round live.
I'll be competing live. Yeah, my first time.
That's so exciting. And like you've done plenty of live streams, and I think you're going to kill it. It's going to be great. And I'm sure you already have the bee in your bonnet to like, now that you've seen the little decline, I feel like you're the type that actually takes a lot of motivation out of the fire of like, oh shit, I got to do this now. Whereas I
That's
don't have
why,
the competitive spirit.
yeah, that's why I put it. I asked to compete live because I know that probably for the next 10 days I will not sleep and I'll get up at 4 in the morning and I'll be like, oh, I need to learn every lambda possible. But I like that kind of pressure, weirdly.
I love it for you, and I wish I could tap into that. I think since I've been diagnosed with ADHD, my get up and go got up and left. And so I've been trying to reinvigorate my motivational strategies. And unfortunately, it looks like this crazy system, which is Officer's Labor. But I'm going to be talking all about creating systems in December, which
Cool.
I need to finish my PowerPoint because I love Danielle Fairhurst, but she was like, "Yeah, are you ready tomorrow to do this?" And I was supposed to do it right after this. Thank God she was busy. So 2 weeks from now, I will be prepared, and then I'll start, doing my TED Talk stuff. But I digress. I have some questions for you about financial modeling. One, I loved the. I like that you intentionally made us in the modules read through all of the 20 principles or like the standards and best practices. So I
Yeah.
actually read through them, and I'm damn near illiterate. So I was like, ugh. I was sitting there like Giles, whatever. And I'm glad I read through it because it all made so much sense and it was very direct. My first, I'm going chronologically through my notes of what I did while I was watching your stuff. So these might be a little jagged and out of order, but when it got to the flows and balances, the section where we were talking about like when you have your revenue, like the bricks, and you have all of you bring all the assumptions in and all of the little recipe parts. My
Yeah.
engineer brain was fighting you. Every word you were saying, I was like, this is a waste. Like, if we go back to the Excel mastery stuff, talking about visualization, the ink tax, I was like, this is so much information in one spot. I get the functionality. Like, I like if I was to hand this completely off to someone that needs to be able to understand it first thing, I think I would lean into that role and be like, yes, we are making it Barney styled right here. But for myself, I was so disinterested with the revenue brick or like the brick with the assumptions. So in your practice, which method do you use more often, or does it depend on the situation?
The annoying answer, I think, for almost every question you're going to have is going to be it depends and on the context. But like for when I was consulting, 'cause I don't really do consulting like that anymore, because full stack's so full on. But I genuinely used fast and stuck to it pretty religiously when I was building models, and that was just because I felt the pain a few times when I didn't do that. And the pain is usually you're sat with a founder, a CFO in front of a board or whatever. Your model's up on screen, you're going through things live, and somebody says, "Oh, just show me how you got to that number." And fast has on so many occasions got me out of trouble where I can't remember. I'm like, "Oh God, how did I get to that number?" And you just hit Control F square bracket, it pops you back to the calculation block. You can see all the numbers. You can see all
Mm.
the ingredients, and you can almost just say to them like, "There's the answer on screen." This what you've touched on though is the fiercest debate that's happening now because of modern Excel and let and lambdas and dynamic arrays. So that whole argument that I felt pretty comfortable just saying like, "Hey, this is the right answer, pretty much, guys." It's a really tricky one now because you've got really clever people like Craig Hatmaker, who's brilliant, doing all of this mad lambda stuff, 5G lambdas, where you've got a really viable argument for you can actually just wrap all the logic up into one cell, stick it in the advanced formula environment or the name manager. Don't worry about every line of detail. Just the answer's right, saves you 90% of the time. Again, it depends on the context, but it's a yeah, interesting time for that argument.
Absolutely. And most of these questions, when I ask you, is more of like your specific opinion of like where do you fall normally. So that was perfect. And
Cool.
I agree completely on. I think it comes back to your who of who's reviewing it and how meticulous they are with details and how much they trust you. Because
Yeah.
I know I've interacted with kind of Goldilocks and the three clients. There's the clients that don't trust anything that are like me and want to see all the detail before they sign off and can homogenize. There's the second type that's like, I trust you. You're the numbers lady. You're the quant. I'll just go with what you say. And then the third is like almost worse that like toggles between only when crises happen. And then they're like, now I want to see all the detail. And so I often build, if I have those bricks, I like to like I never hide rows and columns, but I like to do the grouping. So you can press two, like the two button, everything expands. You can see everything. However, I like how in this you've got your financial stats monthly and then the annual, which I think is a really nice way to do that so that you don't have to have my first, and I can't even besmirch you with the original model. I'll send it to you later. You're gonna be like, Amber, what the fuck is this? I had like the monthlies and then annual, monthlies, annual. And so when it made it a nightmare when like, and I like the way that you do the three statement model, like how you have it, all the A through I is the same brick. So it's consistent, which for all the ways I was trying to fight you on it, you answered it. And I was like, God dang it. It's a good idea. So the nice thing is also hiding all the columns to the right. So you can just control shift right and just, you don't have to keep getting to the end and going around. And so there's a lot of little tips that were non-verbally communicating through this that I really liked, especially like the ease of like the brick on the left with like units, the constants. And if there's no constant, it means there's some sort of formula. So you just go look for it. And so that was really nice. But so now and I'm getting more, I'm like the let lover. I'm like getting more into lambdas, and I'm more so with lambda land. I'm very easy to weaponize, like by call, by row, map scan. Those are great. I'm better at those now, which I'm so glad I had this. So like now I can like just functionally live there. Let's all time, all time. It's so fantastic. But now with financial modeling, I've seen Danielle do a lot of how to build your financial model with fully dynamic arrays.
Yeah.
Do you have any preliminary opinions about that, or in the debate, where do you live?
I mean, I think that's where financial modeling will go. I still think the vast majority of financial modelers aren't using dynamic arrays. There are massive exceptions, by the way. Like we started with a group from RSM Australia, and the head of the team, a guy called Tim, is just all over this stuff. So his team are now further ahead than I've seen any other team that's joined us with Modern Excel. All of their modeling logic is like just 100% lambda, let's dynamic arrays where it's appropriate for it to be that. I'm not excited. So it really depends on the context. I think one of the things people have got excited about is like, oh, wow, dynamic arrays, we can change our 10-year monthly model to a 30-year quarterly model. It's like, well, we could do that before anyway, and I don't
Yeah.
really know the the high volume of use cases where you really want to be able to do that. So I don't care about that so much. Oh, we can change the model from 7 to 12 years. Like, cool, that's really nice. But it is really clever when you've got like asset classes or things where genuinely shifting the individual timeline within a model's timeline, it makes sense to do that with dynamic arrays. So I think it's still early days. You're going to see everybody shifting over to modern Excel within X number of years. I think it's just going to take time for people to get comfortable with it.
I my Absolutely. I am, and if we're remembering back to that forecasting tool I showed you months and months, probably January, and that was a whole mess. She shaped up. We love her so much, but now with dynamic arrays, I like think back of like everything I could have done, but that's none of my business now. The invoice is over. But with that, when it gets to, I like the way this separates out the inputs from the calculation blocks from the like roll up stats and the statement financial, or like the three statement models, three model statements. In the inputs, I think what I was having trouble with before is I come from Anheuser-Busch demand forecasting land, which in the 13 to 52 weeks is very calculation engine, pick a model, move forward. Whereas
Yeah.
the 0 through 13 is very anecdote. It's like a anecdotal multiple regression where you're like, here's a little bit of math and science and events and thoughts and emotions and this that all have to come together to make a choice on what you think that the future looks like. And that's where sometimes with the dynamic model array, like with dynamic arrays in financial modeling, I was getting nervous because what I was doing before was my inputs tabs were, I didn't give the flexibility of one constant or month over month where you can make your decisions in line. And so I was trying to do that in the calculation tab instead of
Yeah.
just letting the engine be the engine. And so I was trying to cross too many wires and they were all short circuiting. And then I was doing like even worse on like the output financial summaries was even doing like little choices there. So I was making choices on 2 or 3 tabs that made no sense and didn't connect. So I'm excited to now, and we'll get to like my who, what, why soon, but like because of the distinction, and I think when you're first getting into the beginning of the training, you're like, why do we need inputs here? And then you bring it in here, and then you bring it in again. But, comma, and I commented this, but the blue and red determining like blue is this is used somewhere else and or this is coming from somewhere else, and red of this is being used somewhere else is so mint, so perfect. I'm so glad I learned that at this moment in life because I've been using yellow for like the yellow bricks for like inputs and things to be changed, but I hadn't been using the like red to designate like don't delete this. Life
Yeah.
changing.
But also it's worth commenting, you will have built complex models in whatever way you've been doing already. But a lot of standards like FAST are built for teams or were originally built with teams of modelers in mind. So, you are a consultant, I was a consultant. You've got way more flexibility or independence on a project to go, do you know what? I need to get to an answer for tomorrow morning. I'm going to make this work, and it's probably not going to be the best solution. That's a lot trickier if you've got a team of 100 modelers do all making that decision 10% of the time to go, meh, do you know what? I'm just going to cut a corner there and do that. So a lot of the standards was like teams of modelers need to work in the same way. Otherwise, you just lose complete control. And then it goes beyond teams. That the whole purpose is to get as many people in the modeling community doing similar things as possible. But yeah, it's a balance, isn't it? If you're a consultant and you need to get something out, sometimes you're going to bend the rules a bit.
You're absolutely correct. And I go between my many hats of like being like with Good Trade Depot, they are my primary client, but I also am director of engineering. So like it's kind of like I have to use the tools I build. I can't just hand it off to someone who's going to be more meticulous, which is tough for me because I'm an opener, not a closer. So, especially those fine details. So, the nice thing about these fast standards and like all of these different organizations with their standards is decreasing the cognitive load for me to be able to communicate information and that's Googleable for someone else. And so, by being similarly, like getting at the beginning of creating database structure. I at Anheuser-Busch took all of our databases for granted, and I didn't realize the work and meticulousness of master data teams to get that stuff right so that everything else can work as it's supposed to. So this is a sin that I will admit wholeheartedly. I am utilizing Airtable for my database creation, or like I have all these data tables that haven't been working because when we get new clients in or if we get new products in or if we get new information in, it's like someone will throw a text in a numbers column and fuck the whole thing, and I'm like, I don't have actually the emotional or mental beings to manage 17 databases to get the infrastructure built for this business right now. But so I'm utilizing that right now, but similarly it's the same thing, decreasing the cognitive load for this thing to get done, and everyone kind of have the like training wheels or bowling bumpers to keep us on the right track until that's built and standard and everyone knows the standard. And then I can always bring it back to Excel, which is my end goal because I don't want to pay for $20 a user and all this stuff forever. Because I don't like utilizing like online, like cloud-based services all the time. So being the small business land has been a little tough because I know what good looks like and I know what great looks like. And then I'm handed a pile of dirt and I'm like, fuck. And so I'm like, how do I get it to look like that? And so, yeah, the going between small business hat and consultant hat is kind of tough sometimes.
Yeah, and I think also for small businesses or not even just small businesses, data can be really messy. And actually, quite often with financial modeling, like you're not looking backwards at all. Like there's lots of types of financial models that don't involve any data, historic data. You're literally just looking forward and you're doing what you kind of were describing before with the inputs. You're doing driver-based modeling where you're literally like explicitly entering the drivers in yellow cells and using that to drive the forecast. So once you start to deal with data, um, and Excel and Power Query and managing data, again, it's like another world. This is probably the biggest thing we train people is this is Power Query. Welcome to a new phase of your life, not having to do all of the horrible manual stuff you've been doing in various ways. That's still the thing for most teams where they go, oh my God, wow, I wish I knew that 10 years ago.
Yeah. I have a big question about that actually. So I am often um I'm a big like I grew up in the forecast accuracy world. I take it very seriously because you don't even know if you're a good forecaster and if you're good making good decisions, if you can trust the decisions you make unless you actually look backwards just mildly to be able to see like how effective of a fortune teller am I. And it's never coming from like a shame place of like, oh, why can't I forecast better? It's like, oh no, this process is just so volatile, and that's where my the industrial engineering like Lean Six Sigma of decreasing the variability in this process. Like if I can get 80% of my SG&A to a tolerance of like up or down 5%, and then I can only focus in on those one cost centers that are really driving my chaos, then
Yeah.
I'm going to have much more time to like deal with things. And so that's where coefficient of variance, highest averages are like highest impacts, and then also forecast accuracy and bias are like huge for me. And so the nice thing is my next, okay, this is my next kind of question. Because I also know to make a good forecast, I like to use as many data sets as possible that are actually impactful. So like for instance, like our QuickBooks export of our like P&L. I'm going to save myself a lot of work by not having to try and guess on all this stuff. We already have like the bookkeeper kind of controller that's doing that stuff. So now it takes a lot of that guesswork out. Separately, we've got like our CRM that has our like prospective sales numbers that then through this, we'll get there in a sec. But my question is, I don't think that you, at the beginning of this training, there was a section where you said, use the right tool. Sometimes Excel isn't going to be the right tool, or, use the right tool for the problem. QuickBooks is so close, but I don't think has the like, either I don't know about its wherewithal to be able to plan really effectively with a lot of different inputs, or it's just not. So I pull everything out of QuickBooks to be able to do all the magic I want to do in Excel.
Yeah.
My question, and this is a very specific question, is if, and I feel like I have the answer, if I can get either one of two reports, homogenized P&L month over month with cost centers, or should I be homogenizing my own P&L from row level transactional data that is already pre-categorized from QuickBooks? So the question is row level data or pre-homogenized data to Excel to then create a P&L.
It depends. So I mean, like my personal opinion would always be to want the granular row level transaction data. But it is funny because when you think of how much money companies spend on these tools, off the shelf tools that quite often are advertised as one thing, but then you get in and it's like, oh, we've got to pay for that,
Mm-hmm.
full diamond level upgrade to get that functionality. Oh Christ, okay. So what does everybody end up doing there? Or the off the shelf reports answer like 90% of what you need for the answer, but not the last 10%. So what do? You export it into Excel and then you're back in the tool that you were using before. Um, so in principle, you shouldn't really be taking all of the data out of a system and rebuilding reports in Excel. But that is what everybody does because usually the tools don't have all of the outputs and the insights that you need them to have. And then if you are going to do that, for me, I would want I wouldn't say the most granular level of detail always. You want the most granular level that allows you to get to whatever answers you're trying to get to. And then if you're rebuilding your own P&L structure, like, yeah, I guess that's what you have to do.
I have toiled back and forth, and definitely my time at Anheuser-Busch was all of these huge legacy systems, and everyone ended up putting stuff in Excel because especially these cloud-based off-the-shelf things is if you have a good idea, you have to be able to prove it's a good idea, so it goes to Excel anyway. Secondarily, if you want to prove to that company to spend the time to innovate that product, it's going to be thousands and thousands of dollars. That's never going to happen. And so that's where I don't think I'm Nostradamus, but like I was at AB, like, oh, everything results in Excel anyway. So I'm going to invest some time connecting all these things and API connections and having refreshable databases that pull from the clouds above. And so I've been fighting with myself. I knew row level data was coming, and I'm like, I think it's my own lack of understanding or like lack of trust in myself that I would be able to replicate the P&L appropriately and like get it to match the internet in a way. But what I noticed is if I do it at the homogenized level, when a new cost center pops up, it's like, well, now I have to create three more checks to make sure that everything kind of ebbs and flows. And so the flexibility of the system I'm creating is actually like, I'm just creating more future stuff for myself. And so that's where the perfectionism demon has been fighting me as I've been doing this. So I have fixed up our month end report. And after this call ends, I'll kind of give you a sneak peek of it. I was randomizing the data. I'm like, there's no way to like randomize this data while also proving that it works. So I was like, not worth the call today, but we'll talk about it soon. So that kept coming up when I was rebuilding it. It works fine. And at least now it's in a place where I can export three things. And I put the variable link so that it'll bring in current month stuff. I fist fought Excel for fucking 3 hours just to find out that I was logged into the wrong account. I felt so stupid when I commented that in like the WhatsApp group. I was like, okay, guys, I know it's stupid. Something's very easily wrong. Thankfully, we were closer with it than we thought.
One thing
Okay.
just to, like to share as well, I think
Yeah.
because you're talking about kind of going into a system and getting data, and it sounds like you've got a reasonable amount of access. I don't know what the right word is, access
Yes.
or rights to do things. There's quite often, or there's traditionally been quite a barrier between IT and finance, wherever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, one of the things you said at the start about realizing how much effort goes into setting up data. Like you think of all the work that goes into making sure data in a company is secured properly, managed properly, shared appropriately. And that's quite often the fight between like a central IT team that doesn't really want to just continually be building new exports and views and database kind of, APIs or whatever for finance every week. And then you've got the finance team that constantly wants information. And I think that's been a battle for a very, very long time. We've seen it overcome really nicely, and it does come down to actually sort of building relationships between finance and IT. And then hopefully you don't have to keep bothering the central IT team every 5 minutes to go, actually, do you know what? I need a different thing now. You can kind of get one true source and then you can do all your analytics off the back of it.
You're so absolutely beyond correct. And the amount of weaseling I did at AB to get people to like me, to give me data, because what I learned is if you're on a, any kind of software, anywhere, internet, like on premise, whatever, if a number exists on a screen, it exists in a database somewhere. That's just the way it goes. And so then when they tried to fight me and say, no, it doesn't, and I'm like, let me dig around in your stuff and I'll find it. And I was the master of, I was what they call like a data dumpster diver. And so I'll just like sift through files. And I was really good at making my team do that too. Because the forecasting team for like the demand forecasting team, not financial specifically, but we were looking into out of stock, so like supply data, and now we're looking at like wholesaler data and sales data and finance data and like all of these different subsets of people that all have way different standards of like how their date conventions are, and if
Yeah.
they use a Monday or a Sunday date. The number of years of my life that have been wasted talking about Monday dates, I could die. Anyways, so you're absolutely completely correct. And that's where I try to phrase it in a way of like, if you just put all of the data in one big freaking table that I can just SQL query off of, like Power Query, put it up there. You don't have to do no manipulations to it. It doesn't even have to run once a day. I'm good. And then I'll never talk to you again because then I don't have to. And so I think the final frontier of my understanding is the pricing of things like snowflakes, like how many pings, data sizes, and that's the stuff that I of my data infrastructure knowledge, I'm very lacking in. So that's why when I talk to like Oracle and I'm trying to get pricing for a small business, they're like it's gonna be 12 grand per year before you even open the book, and I'm like, I will literally never do that. But I
That was,
digress.
I mean, I'm not an expert in that side of things at all, but I did an intro course with Maven Analytics just because I like all of their stuff. We're quite closely linked with them, and it was actually the biggest takeaway was just data's expensive. Like managing data is expensive, so it gave me a lot more empathy for the other side, the IT side, where it's like they actually have a really tough job of managing data appropriately to the point where the costs don't grow exponentially and the business goes under, and keeping it secure and all of that stuff. So yeah, it was a good lesson for me.
Absolutely. I also, I similarly, the movement of data is a weird conversation too. Like, I just thought database exists and you write things to it, but nobody ever really talked about there's things like Fivetran and Zapier and like all of these like basically transportation vehicles of data to get from place to place. And like
Yep.
that's where I think nobody was talking about that, but that is a topic for a different time. Nice thing is I've been handling all of my like memorialization. I'm using that term so loosely, but basically I make my own archive tables in Excel until the data is going to get extreme, but that's a later me problem. Another big comment that I liked, but like I literally this like huge pink brick is all about timetables. And so I like that it was on its own tab because I think I did this in a slightly separate way on the forecasting sheets I've made before is I made them all like vertical tables because I like to stay vertical, but now after seeing this, I'm like, oh, horizontal makes a whole lot of sense, and I'm into the horizontal.
Cool.
I really liked the like numerous time flags and bricks and preliminarily making those flags somewhere else based on logic, not off of like you could tap them in and like, but like for things flags that must move, that was kind of nice. And then oh, Uh, this is a very specific question, but I don't remember the full context of why I asked it. Is there any circumstance where capex and depreciation are positive? So, like, more so depreciation. Is it always a negative number?
Um, yeah, I think so. So I mean, cap, it's typically you might eventually have like a positive impact of capex, which would normally be like
Mm,
if you sell on the assets at the end of or within their useful life, but you sell it for more than you kind of had a value, a residual value for, then you could have like a positive impact on the P&L on the sale of the asset. But generally, yeah, capex is an outgoing cash flow, and the depreciation would always be negative.
I remember why I asked this. So at Good Trade Depot, we are the masters of the auction. And so we find like we literally this is the score of a lifetime. We have two conveyors that are like 20, 30 feet long, each of them. We got them for $5, fully functional, work immediately. Which never happens ever. Like we are so good at finding like just like getting beat up that we found the $5. they're more way worth way more than $5, but we only paid $5. So in circumstances like that, like how does that kind of how does the circumstance of buying something for extremely less than what it's worth impact your capex and depreciation?
It shouldn't do really. So I think it depends. So you can kind of value your balance sheet in different ways. But if essentially if you are buying something and you are depreciating a cost, that's the cost you would depreciate at. And that was kind of what I was alluding to. Like if you then sold the assets
Mm-hmm.
and you made, 50 times more than you paid for them, suddenly you've made a kind of a profit on the sale of an asset, which is something that would eventually feed through into your income statement. But you're also making me think back to all my accounting days now because it's been years since I've done this stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you pay that amount for it, that's what you pay. Again, the only other, and now I'm just thinking off the top of my head, if it depends on the business type, but if you did
Mm.
that quite consistently, and let's say you were bought or the business was acquired, then eventually, there might be kind of a fairer value captured as part of that acquisition when they do the sort of due diligence. Otherwise, it's 5 quid, I guess.
Yeah. And that is sometimes when we're talking about like we'll get a big machine that we know we're only going to use for a year or so, but we are getting them for so cheap because in America there's a lot of like breweries, kombucha factories, places
Yeah.
that are going like we're accidentally benefiting from all of these businesses closing, and so now the non-alcoholic space is growing, and so we're buying up all of this cheap equipment off of these people whose businesses are not doing so good. And so it's like I feel horrible, but I'm like, well, nobody else was going to buy this, so I don't know. But I
The
thought
only
that
thing
was
I
it.
would, the only
Go
thing I
ahead.
would mention, I don't know if it's different in kind of GAAP accounting, because there's always been this unfortunate like disconnect between some parts of IFRS and GAAP. But don't ask me any serious questions about that because I won't.
I'll Google it later, don't you even worry. um the I recognize that offset is much more useful than I've given it credit for in the past. And I think because the financial models aren't doing, oh my God, insane calculations, the offsets actually don't create a situation of
Yeah.
operational inefficiency because it's not like calculating the world. It's just beep boop, like just moving around instead of like using that move around to do crazy things. And so I think I've just been unnecessarily afraid. Like, for instance, I'm so used to today function, like volatile functions creating problems in big things. So I think this healed a little bit of my offset heart. So since you've made this training, have you changed any of your mindset on offset or is it still pretty consistent?
Yeah, a little bit, only in the sense that I guess I am more familiar with a lot of the workarounds. So you can use things like sum ifs and period counters and various flags to actually avoid the need to use offset in quite a lot of situations. Uh, so offset is still harder to review and just for the general user to get their head around because it's a little bit harder to follow the logic.
Yeah.
I think if you can avoid it and you can do things, clever things with sum ifs and count ifs, awesome. But I still wouldn't have it as a hard no, and I still like it sometimes for things like clever depreciation calculations. It can be pretty nifty.
Absolutely. And I found myself the first time I made my investment, like a 5-year financial simulation, I was having the most difficulty of like, well, if I make this investment here, or like if I move it around, I was doing a lot of manual moving inside of the calculation bricks. So the nice thing is the way that your inputs are set up, then with that as well, the way that depreciation was calculating was really nice.
Cool.
And I wrote in green. I was like, get better at offset. I think I just need to heal a bit more of my disinterest in offset because I'm traditionally X lookup, index match, sum ifs, count ifs girl.
Yeah.
So
I
I,
wouldn't totally force yourself to start thinking, oh, I need to use more offset. I think it's I think it's a useful tool to have in your toolkit for things where you're looking at a problem and you're like, okay, this would solve it. But if you could already think of a way around that with some ifs, counters, flags, I would I would probably lean more into those than offsets.
Awesome. Okay, we got that one. Okay, I have a weird little question about static or constants. For instance, let's say most of the SG&A, so like all of the like little expenses.
Yeah.
I don't so what I liked is that the constants easy peas right across. I there's certain things that are going to rise with inflation or like I can imagine that my internet company is going to raise my prices eventually, but I don't want to make it my brain is going between two methods of just make it constant. When you get to that level of granularity of dollars or like 20, 10, 20, $50, not worth meticulously making these the forecasts of these numbers that intelligent. The other half of my brain is like, why don't instead of just saying equals constant, I just do equals constant plus or minus, like plus factor. And that factor can be one, like every year has a factor, whether it's up, down, left, or right.
Yeah.
Which do you, I know you're going to say it depends, but like, what's your vibes on that question?
I am going to say it depends, but I'll elaborate because I think you have to make a judgment call when you're modeling as to the level. Again, it's like the level of granularity, the materiality question. There are definitely in betweens. So I think the extremes of the spectrum are on the one side you've got a single constant. So if you take your I can't remember what example you just used, electricity bill
Hmm.
or whatever, you could have that as a single constant for a 10-year forecast. Never changes. The other extreme is you could have it as a series input, which is 10 years worth of monthly inputs you now have to manage,
Yeah.
which is what 120 individual cells that you would potentially have to manage. And then there's things in between. So you might just have starting input at time zero being 2025 and an annual inflation factor of 2%. And the model is quite simple where it just takes it and depending on the start of the year, wherever you want it to do it, it just uplifts the number in one big lump for the next 12 periods. Sometimes you as a modeler might look at that and be like, actually, okay, it's not electricity. Maybe it's like the rent for the building that we're operating in. We might have 2, 3, 4 year terms. There's a break clause after 4 years. You might make very specific assumptions at that point in time or scenarios around it because you know your rent might be going up by 10% or it might be capped at 3 or something else. So it really just depends on the materiality and how much flexibility you want versus how much do you actually need to manage in the model that you've then built.
Which is the question of the hour, I tell you.
Yep.
On that, I the I've kind of two questions that we might go like a little bit after the hour if you have time. Um, I currently have my month end process where I review like what my expectations of the month would be, what actually ended up happening, and then I investigate the biggest gaps, whether it's the biggest swings, like percentage wise, or the biggest like cost centers, like people, for instance, like investigating the hours, like seeing if everything's lining up and doing that kind of audit. With that, and now we had a meeting with our investor today, our equity team, and we all came up with our long term 1 year, 1 3 North Star, which I liked the North Star bit from the Amazon reporting, and it was like from year 1 to year 30, there's still the same North Star. And so I was using that a little bit in our conversation today. And so we were aligning on like our SWOT analysis and everything. And I'm going to connect those business goals to the financials that are required to achieve those. And so I'm going to be then my why of my model is going to be much more clear. The who, we're all at the table. I'm going to be kind of updating and maintaining, but the whole equity team will be reviewing this stuff, and they're all very hip with that now. The what, this is where I go into three things that I think might be necessary. Right now, we've got the month end, which is fine, and it's functioning the way it should, and it's creating better conversations and tighter analytics on like the transactional. Are we spending money on the right things, or are we even close to profitable? The two other things is long-term financial simulation, like modeling, to see what is the trajectory if we were to follow this with these specific choices we make. What does the long term look like? And then there's second is we have a lot of capex that's necessary to be able to improve processes to be able to create more revenue. And so my main question about this is my month end reporting, rather, how connected should these be with each other? The quick answer in my brain is some sort of export should feed the longer term, and the longer term should be used separately to be able to assess the profit, like the feasibility and the yes, no, should we, shouldn't we? I fear my ability. I don't fear my ability. It's more of like, I want to be intentional. And this is where I got hung up at the beginning of the month is I want to be intentional with what connects and what doesn't have to. And so in your experience, how often do you see the month over month, month end review tying into like a 5 to 10 year financial model?
This was one of the most common challenges and fights we had with companies. And usually the way this ran was we'd be brought in because over a period of years, a finance team led by a finance person had tried to do it all in one. So in one model, they're trying to do all the long-term forecasting, all the strategic scenario planning, and all of the month by month, not just the update the actuals, get an updated forecast, but also tell me why cost line 436 is £7 under what the budget said it was going to be. And our answer was almost always, you kind of want to separate these into two models. That's a very deliberate and difficult decision for people to make because quite often what you'll hear is you don't want to separate things out. But for us, they're models that are doing two different things. They're answering two different questions for usually two slightly different sets of people. So the capex thing, you are essentially hopefully doing scenario modeling, which is strategic. It is what if we spent, raised and spent X amount of money here on this capex, this growth capex or strategic capex? What if we tried to enter the North American market? What if we invested in our marketing, sales and marketing team? What if we spent money on this training? What if we did X, Y, Z? And that gives you that higher level view of like, okay, we think this is the impact on like the sales in this channel, and we're going to have to cover these extra costs. That's very different to, okay, let's roll forward a month and let's look at why our staff costs in this department, 1 out of 50, are 5% higher than we thought they were going to be. If you do separate them out, what we used to do a lot of work with companies for is you still want to ideally come from one data source. And Power Query was great for this again. And I imagine now actually that using the cloud and what am I thinking of? Using the cloud and maybe even modern tools like Fabric and
Mm-hmm.
that whole kind of data environment probably would be even better. But we used to do it with Power Query and just shared drives. And you
Yep.
download a data set, one model pulls on the really granular detail, and the other model can kind of summarize and still give you a level. And then the moment you're in a conversation with people who are doing the long-term strategy things and they say, hey, I noticed that that cost line is 5% higher than it was, you say, yeah, cool. This model isn't for that.
Yeah.
We can get you that answer, but it's a different model.
Yep. That makes sense. And that comes back down to the is not, like, each tool has its own, this is specifically what this is used for. And I think the mix of the problem I was having originally was that in the startup phase of our business is we were buying so many things that like I felt like if I don't focus on it right now and I don't like I there is something to be said about like forecasting like near term the investments, but like the level of which we were buying things was so fierce that I felt like, well, this impacts everything. And I'm still in the process of like proving it to investors and all these people. And I like, now that we're in a steadier state and actually need to manage our costs tightly, now it makes more sense. Or it's easier to create the division of long term, short term, which is nice.
Great.
The last words of wisdom, essentially, the nice thing is this. So I did this on the plane last night. I was like, well, I won't have I won't have a ton of like Excel to show you. But the nice thing is what I realized with myself was the problems with the stuff that we have now and the reason why month end ends 15 days into the month is because I am overwhelmed with all the details I have to do. And then I get to the middle of the month, I'm like, God damn, I need to send that. And it's like a shame factory. So now as I'm building, it needs to be updatable, memorializable, useful to non-Excel users. And then this, I like also there's a lot of the person behind the computer of holding myself and the team accountable to logical data-based decision making when making these financial choices, because I think we're out of the startup woods and we're getting closer to a steady state. So it's like, okay, we don't get to just say, oh, we need this thing now. Like we have to make a decision based on what is actually feasible. Like our girl, Sarah, and her bakery. The coolest part is what I recognized is the most difficult part about, so when we look into like our forecast, the most important things for us are like revenue, which is our canning projects, the
Yeah.
COGS associated with those canning projects, and then everything else. Like really now, the investment, the equipment, capex, and SG&A are like leveled off. So like I don't have to focus as hard on that. So nice thing is by focusing on managing our our production projects and our COGS, that has inquired what happens is so I like mapped out the entire like process of our business from introduction with a client all the way to client paying final invoice and all
Cool.
of the sections where data is necessary to come out of that process and into this sheet so that we can track profitability and actually forecast for the profitability of that project, not just the revenue, but the COGS as well. Because I think because we cost engineered our quoting, we're like, yeah, it's just going to work. And then it's like, it could be working, but we actually have no visibility to see how well it's working and how to
Yeah.
reutilize those the profit coming from those. So this has
That's great.
encouraged the correct data coming out of the process at the right time so I can hold the right people accountable. Now, the last question I have is this requires our CRM. It requires our quoting calculator, our batch calculator, and our invoicing. That's 4 systems.
Yeah.
And we know systems like to have their own little moments. So this is where I think there's 2 sides of my brain, and I'm going to see which side you fall on. Is this is going to enforce and create a system of enforcement that all of these different systems need to be utilized correctly with these different data points, which is going to encourage better data quality across the board. Or, so this is either going to raise the standard of the whole, like all ships are rising kind of situation,
Yeah.
or it's going to be an administrative nightmare where I am chasing 5 people to get the right data in the right places. And then the systems will all fall in each other and I'm not going to get any closer to a clear profitability outlook. So are we on team all ships will rise or administrative nightmare?
I'd probably be on team like let's find out. Like,
I'm on that one.
do you know what I mean? Because that probably tells you quite a lot if by you pushing for data in certain ways, if it does all fall apart, that's quite revealing. You might want to, and again, I'm not an expert in this, but one of the things on my to-do list is to really get up to speed with things like Power Automate. And Zapier we use in our business, but I think if you've got, their kind of Microsoft environment uh, in the business already, I'm convinced that tools like Power Automate can be used so much more than they are, and certainly more than I would be able to at the moment, so that you can actually semi-automate or fully automate a lot of this stuff. So it might be worth looking at that so that you're not just building another mammoth manual wheel that you've got to turn every month.
Absolutely. The nice thing is also this is creating system consolidation. So right now, I really took a hard look at myself and I go, we're in Wix, Pipedrive, Airtable, Excel, and this other thing. Now I'm like, okay, how can we get these forms submitted to Airtable so that it goes to the data, and then the automation will already pull it into a way that's already necessary and in a way that I like. And so it's the great migration of all client. And then the thing I like about Airtable is there's client portals as well as like the client portals. And that's an issue we have is like we have Microsoft. I love them, but the guest access and the client portal hood is so hard. So I'm taking the easy way out with Airtable. And so I'm going to get everything kind of in form so people can give the right information off the jump and then homogenize it this way. So I'm excited to dive into this and then eventually show you cool stuff. But thank you so much for your time today. That was basically all of my questions. And then the nice thing is that this encouraged me to, one, take a hard look at myself with the process and why there's so much data all over the place. Second
Yeah.
is to actually align all of the right people on what our actual strategic initiatives are and what financial stuff we need to be monitoring to get there, which goes back to the very first lesson of the who, what, when, why, how situation. So Giles, thank you all for all of what you do. Any final words of wisdom for the office hours of the Amber community?
No, but I think feedback for you, I think it's cool the way you're approaching this stuff because one of the things we try and tell people all the time is like, don't just be a spreadsheet geek. Like, it's great if you are good technically at Excel, but if the only thing you do in your life and career is wait for somebody to tell you what to do in Excel and then you do it well, you're going to be out of a job probably in the next few years. So like, all of the stuff you do is so strategic, and you're thinking at so many levels about the tech stack and where does Excel fit into that, and what else are we using, and how can I improve this stuff. So yeah, it's very cool the journey you're going on.
Thank you so much. And the nice thing is once I build like the coolest part about all this is like if I can build all of this infrastructure from scratch and build out my own tech stack that I like, I can repeat that with every single little business that I possibly like. Right now is like the capital, like the investment I'm putting into building my frameworks and infrastructure for me as a consultant to just productize my tech stack rollout and like tools and stuff. It's definitely like I'm pushing my brain to the absolute limits to try and make these systems approachable for small businesses, which I think will pay dividends eventually, but it is difficult, that's for sure.
Yeah, but I bet you would then know more than 95% of the people you interact with. Like, there'll be stuff you're doing, loads of stuff that you're already doing that I would have no clue about. And I'm sure that would be the same for a lot of other people. So keep doing it.
Well, thank you so much, Giles. I'm going to, for anyone watching this stream, thank you so much for joining. And next week is the community call. If you'd like to join, there is a link in the bio somewhere where you can join the Officers Amber community. But yes, catch you guys later. Giles, I'll stay on the call